They can't even write a sentence. What do you do when your students don't have the basics and you need to take them much further down the line? Where do you start? Let's get going. Hi, I'm Robin Mellum, children's book author and middle school ELA teacher. I have a program that I've written called the Structured Writers Workshop. This is part 2 in my series on struggling writers, writing interventions, what strategies and techniques work for them. And in the last one, I talked about reluctant writers trying to dig into the problem and figure out what it is and use psychology and techniques to bring them around to enjoying the writing process. That's a huge part of it. So then what if you find that once they are starting to write, their sentence structure is nowhere near where it needs to be? What do you do? So in this video, we're going to do part 2 of writing intervention, sentence writing and grammar. I'll show you how I tackle those things and I'll show you the resources that I have. Let's get going. Okay, here we are, part 2, writing intervention strategies. In part 1, I talked about reluctant writers, so be sure to go back and watch that one if you haven't seen that one yet. It's all going to kind of flow together. This one's about sentence writing and grammar. I wanted to show a couple of quotes. I love quotes. I love having the students respond to quotes too. You become what you give your attention to. And part of this has, when we talk about spelling and grammar, where do we as the teacher focus our attention to help them focus their attention? And I tell them this, that what you pay attention to grows. So if you get lazy with your writing, you do that over and over, you will get very good at being lazy with your writing. So if you attend to it more, it will grow and get better. The lazier you are, the lazier you get. That's how that works. We're going to talk about how to deal with sentence and grammar in 2 different ways: reactive tips and proactive tips. Reactive, this is things that you could do starting tomorrow, today. What can you do to make this a little bit better to finish out your school year? I'm going to give you some tips on that, and then how to start thinking about next year. And for each one of these, I'm going to give you 5 different ideas to think about. With reactive, we're going to talk about checklists, incentives, class and individual, accepting it or not accepting it, and what to do across the curriculum. So let's get into reactive. One thing I've been doing lately is creating checklists that go at the end of their assignments. I started doing this with their warm-ups when I noticed that they were slacking a little bit on some of their writing, with making sure that it had a capital letter and a period, just the basics. Making them pause at the end of it was a great way for them to just stop for a moment and think, did I do this? It doesn't get everybody at 100%, but it definitely increased the amount of kids I had turning in correctly punctuated sentences. And then I went on from there. If you see on the right here, I told them now, and we just kind of keep adding on to it. Like, now I know you could do it. Now we're going to go into our daily quick writes, and I want you to pick one of those. It don't have to be every single one, but pick one to revise it and check every sentence and period and capital letter in there. So just kind of keep growing on the idea of doing a checklist for them. Now, the other thing I do is class incentives. So when we're doing our warm-ups, or any assignment really, I will often take a look at it and give a quick percentage of the number of people who did it correctly. And, at the beginning of the year, when I first started warm-ups, they were literally like 3 of them could write a compound sentence. Now we're at 98%, which is fantastic. So I even have here it is. This is my jar of marbles. They are full. So they want to have a class party. They like to play games together. I make that a big deal. You can also have a student be in charge of graphing the percentage each time so they can see it grow. Again, whatever you give your attention to, that will grow. So if that's what you want them to do, then put your attention to it and then they will follow. I also do individual incentives, and I use Class Kick, which is great because they have these cute little stickers, and it takes just a second as I'm just kind of scrolling through to go boop, 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 boop. And I don't know why, but they love getting trophies. And when they get a trophy, I call their name out. And that is more of an incentive too. So-and-so trophy, so-and-so trophy. And it becomes like It's kind of a game show, honestly, but we're trying to keep these kids engaged. And so that's what I do. So you could do incentives, checklists. Those are things you could start right away. The other thing is that I've started to not accept work. If I have put out the expectation that I need you to do capital letters and check your punctuation and put periods in there, but when I get it and it's not happening, I just push it back out and say, I'm not even going to grade this. Look it over again. Just don't accept it. And then if they keep doing it, eventually they'll get the bad grade, but at least they know that they're going to go through the pain of that again. Other reactive that I have for you is to when you're putting your attention to this, do it with all the other subjects and reuse some of your checklists. So at the bottom here of this activity that we did in history, I took a snip of the checklist that they were using for their current warm-ups and put it in there. So now they're seeing something from their ELA class in their history class, and they're applying the same thing because for some reason they forget that writing is writing. So put checklists wherever you can. Now let's talk about something more proactive, meaning how are we going to deal with this throughout the whole entire year? How are we going to set them up for success? So this is something to start thinking about for next year of what you could do to kind of revamp anything that you need to get this more solid. I have found, and these are the 5 things I'll talk about, is the daily sentence writing, targeting my expectations, doing boot camps, writing with pros, and celebrating to be way better than worksheets. No, saying, I'll show you what these look like. So these are warm-ups, and they do 3 ask every day. And the first one is sentence combining. And I found some research. If you go back into my other video about the research on writing, what I found was that sentence combining actually had the highest effect on them actually using it in their own writing. And so I use the gradual release model but think of it in terms of the entire year, not just a day or a week. We start out kind of easier where I give them 2 sentences here, and all they're doing is rewriting them and putting in a comma and a conjunction. And we do that for a while. And then we move on. By month 3, we're doing compound sentences still, but now I'm just giving them some fragments and having them put it together into a compound sentence. As we go through the year, then we're moving on to complex sentences, same thing. And then by the end, now I'm just giving them a topic and I tell them, do you want to write a compound or complex sentence? They know the difference now, and then they write it. This is another thing to keep track of as far as when you're celebrating the percentage, have a student keep track on a chart, watch it, give your attention to it, and they'll get better. I wanted to talk about targeted expectations because the second activity that they do in warm-ups is like a grammar skill. It's a multiple choice thing. And then the third thing is a quick write. And these are so important to do every day because it gets them over block. And for some reason, they all seem to know what that term is now. I don't know if it was something they saw on TikTok or whatever, but I've never had kids, as many of them, saying, I can't do this. I have writer's block. I'm like, really? Are you 35 and have a PhD? So the more they write, the more they'll get over this because they'll be writing in all these different kind of angles and ways. And I tell them that the goal of the quick write is to experiment, to be creative, to find joy, to do something new. And I tell them they don't have to worry about grammar and spelling and periods. At this point, I'm looking for ideas and flow. That's what I would love to see. Maybe it's just even dialogue back and forth, what someone's saying about this. Just telling them that there's part of their warm-up where I don't care about spelling and grammar, and they're like, woo, kind of loosens them up and it helps them kind of get into this more. And then like you saw before, I added on the expectation later that, okay, now out of the week, pick one of these to fix and do all the grammar and make it stronger. So I get way more buy-in doing it this way. I'm going to talk about my boot camps. So a couple of times a year, I'll kind of stop and we'll just kind of drill down on sentence writing itself. And I start with simple sentences that we all do as a whole class, just a reminder, and I double check that everybody's with us. We can all do this. And they have to have their subject, predicate, capital letter, period. Okay, cool. You graduated training. Now we move on. And after that, I like to do groups where I work with a small group. It's really easier for me to just have a smaller amount of kids so I can make sure and give them feedback right there. And these are the boot camps that I have. Some of them they have QR codes and stuff, kind of fun. So I give them a guide page that tells them the skill they're trying to practice. It gives them a boring example, a better example, and then it gives them some tasks. And then they do this with me where they see what an author has written using this style. Then I give them a little help, and then a little bit of help, and then they do it all on their own. So it's another gradual release model with those. And these are the boot camps that I have. Delayed adjectives. 1, 2, 3. There's 5 different types of sentences that they work on with me, so they can start to see that sentences aren't just subject and predicate, that there's all these different cool ways to do it. And they love that they have these. For some reason, they love the opening adjective one. That one they think is super cool. Before I get to the final ones, I did want to say, if you want to dive deeper into my workshop and how I run all this, I have a training. It's a 10 module training. It is over 5 hours, I believe, of exactly everything that I do in my ELA classroom in regards to writing. And there's also the training and all the materials if you want that, and I'll have links below. The first module is free, so you can go down there and check it out and see if you're interested in. Now, the other proactive part of this is write with the pros. I really, really love pulling things from novels, and so they can see it in action and know, oh, this actually is how you do writing. So just a fun way for them to see how sentences are structured. And finally, celebrating. So this was from another teacher who was doing the Structured Writers Workshop, and she created a Padlet with all of the 6 skills that we learn on repeat in our workshop. And then she just, whenever they're writing, she'll take a snip and she'll start to throw them in there. So at any point, when you want them to go take a look at seeing some of the examples, you just have them go over to this Padlet and see if they can find their own or somebody else's. So the celebrating has to do with the marbles for humans are what they earned during Writers Workshop. And that is all part of the training. So those are the things that I would do to start getting before just turning straight to worksheets. Now, we finished sentence writing and grammar. And next, I'm going to talk about paragraph writing. How are you going to expand this writing even more until we can eventually get into essays? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.